He is a major steal for the Boston Celtics. That is right. Anton Watson has been fantastic for the Celtics in their summer league so far, and he is looking like a diamond in the rough for the Boston Celtics. Brad Stevens has struck once again in the second round, and could he potentially earn that last roster spot or last two-way spot? We'll be discussing all of that and more on this episode of Celtics Digest. I'm Bruce Velez. Before we dive in, before we get into all this news, though, you guys have been absolutely fantastic hitting that like button, hitting that subscribe button, showing your guys support. So if you want to make sure you stay up to date on daily Celtics content revolving around the best team in the NBA, hit that subscribe button as this is the place for you. Without further ado, though, let's dive into the topic at hand. Make sure to grab a snack. And like I mentioned in the introduction, Anton Watson is an absolute steal for the Boston Celtics this season, being selected in the second round. Now, Anton Watson was our selection at pick 54, the one selection before Bronny James. Now, the Celtics could have trolled, could have selected Bronny James, could have had their fun, but instead, they went with an unproven project in Anton Watson from Gonzaga. A three tweener slash four who can be that sharpshooting, maybe probably spacer out at that 3 point line if that shot goes down, but has the intangibles to be a solid interior defender for this Boston Celtics team. Now, like I mentioned, there is an abundance of players on this Celtics roster. In our latest video, we broke down Jordan Walsh and JD Davidson. In today's video, talking about this summer league roster, we're going to be talking about a guy named Anton Watson, who, like I said and mentioned, was the Celtics' second selection in this year's NBA draft, being their second round pick, being pick number 54. Now, if we want to look at Watson's stats, I do have the four box scores like I did in the previous video, comparing like I did with Jordan Walsh and JD Davidson, looking at Watson's stats through the stat sheet, and we'll be going over the intangibles that I like with Watson so far. First game versus the Miami Heat. He did pretty solid. 4 for 7 from the field. Did not hit his three-pointer, but had a total of 8 rebounds with 1 steal and 1 block. Something that I really, really like to see out of Watson. Now, like I mentioned, he's a little bit of that tweener, playing that 3/4. I think he's going to be primarily more of a 4, but he can be that type of player. And I see a little bit of Cam Johnson in him. That's kind of my NBA kind of comparison. A guy who can play that 4 position, but might be a little bit shorter and stockier, but can stretch out and play that 4 and guard those type of guys, but maybe should be qualified as a 3. But ultimately, I love a guy in Anton Watson, and I think he could be something special for us. We want to look at this next game versus the Los Angeles Lakers. We can see that Watson didn't get as many shot attempts as he did in the first game, only a total of 3, but a total of 7 rebounds, 1 assist, a steal, and a block to go alongside his 2 turnovers, and he looked more comfortable in the second game. We saw Watson I at least saw Watson feeling more comfortable in his placements on the court. He seemed to find that, low block to the corner, his kind of special area, and kind of prioritizing and walking around that kind of perspective of the court. I also really like to see what Watson could do defensively. Like I said, guarding these threes, guarding these fours, guarding these fives. He can be a physical, lanky defender, and I truly think that he is going to hold himself on that side of the floor. The defensive, the playmaking stuff is going to be the key stuff to see with Watson, and that shooting's just got to be able to stretch and be able to hit that 3 point shot in the NBA clip. If he can stretch out and be that scorer, Brad Stevens cook again with another steal here. But let's keep diving in, keep looking at our boy Anton Watson as he's had some beautiful, beautiful plays. Now, obviously, Watson came off the bench in those first 2 games with guys like Kada, Springer, all those guys getting their run. But guys like that kind of getting rest into game 3 and into game 4, Watson has gotten a little bit more of a showing and has kind of shown us Celtics fans what he can produce on a bigger clip. We see in the game versus the Hornets, the comeback win, he takes his most shots in 12 and it shoots a perfect 50% from the field. He also took 9 threes, only hit 3, shooting 30%, but that's something I can live and die with. A total of 5 rebounds, 2 assists, 2 steals, and a block as well, doing all the intangibles with a plus 12 and 16 points. In my eyes, this is where Watson really shined and really showed us that he could be a contributor for this Celtics team, regardless if it's on a two-way deal or if it's on a standardized contract. This was the game in the comeback that Celtics fans kind of said, "Ooh, Anton Watson, he's not an Exhibit 9 and Exhibit 10, maybe Maine Celtic. He's a guy that could possibly work his way up to this real roster, could be a kind of fundamental part of this team." And he's been compared to Al Horford his whole kind of being a rival in Boston. He says he wants to work up to that. Obviously, would love to be a guy like Al Horford, being that veteran. I still think he has a long way to get till he gets to that role. But a guy like Watson kind of being compared to a baby Al Horford is something that you love to see already. Similar to how we saw with Xavier Tillman and kind of working him into Al Horford. If we can have Watson and Tillman be a combination of both Al Horford with his size, physicality, his shooting, his defensive prowess, man, oh man, are the Celtics going to be tough to guard because they are going to have guys that can guard your smaller guys that can also do that, but also guys that can guard your bigger centers as well that also play that position. We are set, and Brad Stevens is cooking in ways that other GMs are going to realize in a couple of years. I'm telling you. Lastly, looking at this game versus the Dallas Mavericks, we see Watson also attempt 11 shots, makes 5 of those, where he shot 2 for 4 from the 3-point range, which is a better efficiency from three-pointer. Obviously, still solid on the boards as well, getting some assists and some steals and blocks for this Boston Celtics team. A total of 9 points. But versus that Dallas Mavericks team, the Celtics ultimately as a whole didn't have their greatest team performance, but we did see some nice performances as a whole. Ultimately, Anton Watson, I think, is a guy who is above that Exhibit 9, Exhibit 10-day contract that we've seen for guys like Tristan Anwara, for guys like Ron Harper Jr. I think that he is a step above all of that. I think that Watson is either going to be contributing to the Boston Celtics on either one of two ways. I think he'll either be gifted that last roster spot, or I think he'll be gifted the final two-way spot. And that kind of gets into the next part of what contract will Watson receive. Kind of looking at that, I think personally the two-way spot is the more likely outcome due to the fact that he was a second-round pick. I don't think necessarily they're going to give him their full jump to their regular roster. Still think they want to have that roster spot open just in case some trades are to go down or for the possibly on the buyout market. And still, we have not seen all the moves being done with the NBA so far. So some teams could still filter out some trades before the start of the season. We still have a couple months to go. And even though that could happen. That can maybe make a guy open that could be a nice fit for the Boston Celtics on a buyout market, and that's a guy we go out and get. So ultimately, I don't think he'll make the actual roster at this moment. I think he'll be a two-way guy, similar to a guy like Kata, and will be alongside Peterson and JD Davidson this year as the 3 two-way guys under roster. He will play on the Maine Celtics, but also get to travel with this Celtics team. And if the Celtics had injuries, or obviously with Horford needing some rest, we might get to see a guy like Anton Watson on a game where Porziņģis is out early on in the season and Horford needs rest, being on that bench just as a secondary or third guy, just in case they need to look at him. And those are the games you could possibly see him being out there. Obviously, I expect versus bad teams like the Nets and the Wizards and blowout games, he'll definitely be called up, especially during the later of the season, and we'll get some run. But ultimately, I think Anton Watson is going to be a two-way guy for the Boston Celtics team. I think he's going to get that final two-way spot. And I think the Celtics are going to prioritize him as coming up and down, learning as much as he can from the guys and Al Horford, Xavier Tillman, Neemias Queta, while also getting his run and actually getting some experience in playing time, similar to how to Jordan Walsh did last season in Maine, so that he can actually, stick up to speed, be able to play with these players, and then when he gets to go over to Boston, he can also, not be too sluggish, not be too slow, and actually be ready to compete with those guys. Let me know what you guys think down below in the comment section. What do you guys think is going to happen with Anton Watson? Like I said, I think he's a steal. I'm happy Brad Stevens has hit this home run pick, has taken this swing, and nailed it perfectively by getting a guy in Anton Watson. We've seen the Celtics make all these fantastic moves in seasons past, but Brad Stevens is really hitting drafting these last couple of years, and I'm really liking what I'm seeing, especially with how the new CBA is going to affect the implications for second apron teams, and with the Celtics being strapped into that for the foreseeable future, having a good draft strategy is necessary, and Brad Stevens has already been excelling at that, hitting on his 3 home run picks of Jordan Walsh, Bailey Shireman, and now drafting Anton Watson in the last 2 years. Let me know what you guys think down below in the comment section. Let me know your guys' thoughts, how you guys feel about this Boston Celtics team and about Anton Watson. Once again, I'm Bruce Veliz. I'll catch you guys in the next video. Have a great rest of your day, and go Boston Celtics.